Maine. Chapter 18. A New Responsibility for Joe. Heaving in on the anchor chain till it was up and down, 'Frisco Kid and Joe ceased from their exertions. Everything was in readiness to give the Dazzler the jib and go. They strained their eyes in the direction of the shore. The clamor had died away, but here and there lights were beginning to flash. The creaking of a block and tackle came to their ears, and they heard Red Nelson's voice singing out, "Lower away and cast off!" "French Pete forgot to oil it," 'Frisco Kid commented, referring to the tackle.
"Taking their time about it, ain't they?"
the boy on the Reindeer called over to them, sitting down on the cabin and mopping his face after the exertion of hoisting the mainsail single-handed.
"I guess they're all right,"
'Frisco Kid rejoined. "All ready?"
"Yes, all right here." "Say, you,"
the man on the yacht cried through the skylight, not venturing to show his head.
"You better go away." "And you better stay below and keep quiet,"
was the response.
"We'll take care of ourselves, and you do the same." "If I was only out of this, I'd show you,"
he threatened.
"Lucky for you, you're not,"
responded the boy on the Reindeer, and thereat the man kept quiet. "Here they come," said 'Frisco Kid suddenly to Joe. The two skiffs shot out of the darkness and came alongside. Some kind of an altercation was going on, as French Pete's voice attested.
"No, no," he cried. "Put it on the Dazzler. The Reindeer, she sail too fast, run away. Oh, so quick, and never more I see it. Put it on the Dazzler. What you say?"
"All right, then," Red Nelson agreed. "We'll whack it up afterward. But say, hurry up. Out with you, lads, and heave her up. My arm's broke." The men tumbled out, ropes were cast aboard, and all hands, with the exception of Joe, tailed on. The shouting of men, the sound of oars, and the rattling and slapping of blocks and sails told that the men on shore were getting under way for the pursuit. "Now," Red Nelson commanded, "all together. Don't let her come back, or you'll smash the skiff. There she takes it. A long pull and a strong pull. Once again, and yet again. Get a turn there, somebody, and take a spell." Though the task was but half accomplished, they were exhausted by the strenuous effort, and hailed the rest eagerly. Joe glanced over the side to discover what the heavy object might be, and saw the vague outlines of a small office safe. "Now, all together," Red Nelson began again. "Take her on the run, and don't let her stop. Yo-ho, heave-ho, once again, and another. Over with her." Straining and gasping, with tense muscles and heaving chests, they brought the cumbersome weight over the side, rolled it on top of the rail, and lowered it into the cockpit on the run. The cabin doors were thrown apart, and it was moved along end for end till it lay on the cabin floor, snug against the end of the centerboard case. Red Nelson had followed it aboard to attend. His left arm hung helpless at his side, and from the fingertips blood dripped with monotonous regularity. He did not seem to mind it, however, nor even the mutterings of the human storm he had raised ashore, and which, to judge by the sounds, was even then threatening to break upon them. "Lay your course for the Golden Gate," he said to French Pete as he turned to go. "I'll try to stand by you, but if you get lost in the dark, I'll meet you outside off the Farallones in the morning." He sprang into the skiff after the men, and with a wave of his uninjured arm, cried hastily, "And then it's for Mexico, my lads, Mexico and summer weather." Just as the Dazzler, freed from her anchor, paid off under the jib and filled away, a dark sail loomed under their stern, barely missing the skiff in tow. The cockpit of the stranger was crowded with men, who raised their voices angrily at sight of the pirates. Joe had half a mind to run forward and cut the halyards so that the Dazzler might be captured. As he had told French Pete the day before, he had done nothing to be ashamed of, and was not afraid to go before a court of justice. But the thought of 'Frisco Kid restrained him. He wanted to take him ashore with him, but in so doing he did not wish to take him to jail. So he too began to experience a keen interest in the escape of the Dazzler. The pursuing sloop rounded up hurriedly to come about after them, and in the darkness fouled the yacht which lay at anchor. The man aboard of her, thinking that at last his time had come, gave one wild yell, ran on deck, and leaped overboard. In the confusion of the collision, and while they were endeavoring to save him, French Pete and the boys slipped away into the night. The Reindeer had already disappeared, and by the time Joe and 'Frisco Kid had the running gear coiled down and everything in shape, they were standing out in open water. The wind was freshening constantly, and the Dazzler heeled a lively clip through the comparatively smooth stretch. Before an hour had passed, the lights of Hunter's Point were well on her starboard beam. 'Frisco Kid went below to make coffee, but Joe remained on deck, watching the lights of South San Francisco grow and speculating on their destination. Mexico! They were going to sea in such a frail craft! Impossible! At least it seemed so to him, for his conceptions of ocean travel were limited to steamers and full-rigged ships. He was beginning to feel half sorry that he had not cut the halyards, and longed to ask French Pete 1,000 questions. But just as the first was on his lips, that worthy ordered him to go below and get some coffee and then to turn in. He was followed shortly afterward by 'Frisco Kid, French Pete remaining at his lonely task of beating down the bay and out to sea. Twice he heard the waves buffeting back from some flying forefoot, and once he saw a sail to leeward on the opposite tack, which luffed sharply and came about at sight of him. But the darkness favored, and he heard no more of it, perhaps because he worked into the wind closer by a point, and held on his way with a shaking after leech. Shortly after dawn the two boys were called and came sleepily on deck. The day had broken cold and gray, while the wind had attained half a gale. Joe noted with astonishment the white tents of the quarantine station on Angel Island. San Francisco lay a smoky blur on the southern horizon, while the night, still lingering on the western edge of the world, slowly withdrew before their eyes. French Pete was just finishing a long reach into the Raccoon Straits, and at the same time studiously regarding a plunging sloop yacht half a mile astern. "They think to catch the Dazzler, eh? Bah!" And he brought the craft in question about, laying a course straight for the Golden Gate. The pursuing yacht followed suit. Joe watched her a few moments. She held an apparently parallel course to them, and forged ahead much faster. "Why, at this rate they'll have us in no time," he cried. French Pete laughed. "You think so? Bah! They outfoot, we outpoint. They are scared of the wind. We wipe the eye of the wind. Ah, you wait, you see." "They're travelin' ahead faster," 'Frisco Kid explained, "but we're sailin' closer to the wind. In the end we'll beat 'em, even if they have the nerve to cross the bar, which I don't think they have. Look, see?" Ahead could be seen the great ocean surges, flinging themselves skyward and bursting into roaring caps of smother. In the midst of it, now rolling her dripping bottom clear, now sousing her deckload of lumber far above the guards, a coasting steamer schooner was lumbering drunkenly into port. It was magnificent, this battle between men and the elements. Whatever timidity he had entertained fled away, and Joe's nostrils began to dilate and his eyes to flash at the nearness of the impending struggle. French Pete called for his oilskins and sou'wester, and Joe also was equipped with a spare suit. Then he and 'Frisco Kid were sent below to lash and cleat the safe in place. In the midst of this task Joe glanced at the firm name, gilt-lettered on the face of it, and read Bronson and Tate. Why, that was his father and his father's partner. That was their safe, their money. 'Frisco Kid, nailing the last cleat on the floor of the cabin, looked up and followed his fascinated gaze. "That's rough, isn't it?" he whispered. "Your father?" Joe nodded. He could see it all now, They had run into San Andreas, where his father worked the big quarries, and most probably the safe contained the wages of the 1,000 men or more whom he employed. "Don't say anything," he cautioned. 'Frisco Kid agreed knowingly. "French Pete can't read, anyway," he muttered, "and the chances are that Red Nelson won't know what your name is. But just the same, it's pretty rough. They'll break it open and divide up as soon as they can, so I don't see what you're going to do about it." Wait and see. Joe had made up his mind that he would do his best to stand by his father's property. At the worst, it could only be lost, and that would surely be the case were he not along. While being along, he at least had a fighting chance to save it, or to be in a position to recover it. Responsibilities were showering upon him thick and fast. But a few days past he had had but himself to consider. Then, in some subtle way, he had felt a certain accountability for 'Frisco Kid's future welfare. And after that, and still more subtly, he had become aware of duties which he owed to his position, to his sister, to his chums and friends, and now, by a most unexpected chain of circumstances, came the pressing need of service for his father's sake. It was a call upon his deepest strength, and he responded bravely. While the future might be doubtful, he had no doubt of himself, and this very state of mind, this self-confidence by a generous alchemy, gave him added resolution. Nor did he fail to be vaguely aware of it, and to grasp dimly at the truth that confidence breeds confidence, strength, strength. End of chapter 18.